Welcome to the Big Game James Show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, of course, Big Game James, known by close personal friends, family, and others alike as James F. Thomas IV. If you're wondering what my middle name is, maybe I'll tell you one day, if you get to know me. Anyhow, just a quick reminder before we go into today's show. We as in Think Slinger Media, just launched a new set of programming dedicated to sci-fi radio and horror radio, old school stuff. And we started a website which streams this stuff 24 hours a day, round the clock. Screamradio.com. Scream-radio.com. You don't need to type out the word hyphen. It's not going to get you anywhere if you do. Scream-radio.com. We're really excited about it. Cat's out of the bag. In case you didn't know, I'm a big fan of old horror radio, old sci-fi radio. Think War of the Worlds, stuff like that. The old CBS suspense series, etc. But we've gone back into the archives and have found a ton of great stuff, a ton of great programming, the pre-television era. Believe it or not, if you can believe it or not, that people used to sit around their radios to listen to their entertainment. I still think that there's value in that. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this show if it wasn't for that belief. And I certainly wouldn't have signed off on something like screamradio.com had I not thought there was an audience for it as well. I really like this stuff. It's a great form of entertainment. It's a great way to just kind of sit back, throw the lights out, and just stretch out on your couch and let your imagination take you wherever the programming takes you. It's fun stuff. So get on over there and check it out. Leave a message if you like. And be sure to tell your friends about it. It's fun stuff. All right, enough of that. On to today. We're talking about illegal pitching. Just recently, Brian Matusz of the Baltimore Orioles was caught, I'm going to say allegedly, using a foreign substance from his arm in a game, and he was ejected and subsequently suspended for 8 games. And he's appealing that process. So not trying to date the show or anything. If you hear this show after the appeal is heard and things change, et cetera, just know that this issue in general can transcend any specific day. I mean, you can come back and listen to this show whenever you like, because the real question is whatever happened to the spitball, and that's the question we're going to explore today. The names Gaylord Perry and and now Brian Matusz come to mind immediately when thinking about this. But, today we're going to explore the question, whatever happened to the spitball? Once upon a time, a pitcher would do anything to doctor a baseball. We can go back to the dead ball era and see a lot of that happening. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I'm going to run you through a scenario real quick. I'm not going to run you through the Brian Matusz scenario, because all you have to do to see that one is just go on any ESPN.com, MLB.com, any sports page today and see. I mean, there's people still talking about this. I'm obviously talking about it right now. But I want to take you back to Game 2 of the 2006 World Series, and Kenny Rogers has come out for warm-up tosses. It's a chilly 44 degrees in Detroit, the kind of night that makes it tough for pitchers to find a proper grip on the ball. The kind of night when a pitcher just might look for an equalizer. Just a few pitches into the inning, Fox cameras picked up a curious sight. The palm of Rogers' hand was just really dirty. Not just regular dirty. I mean, it was really dirty. I mean, it was soft with something. With the help of multiple camera angles and super slow motion, the 18 million people watching the game see a huge dark brown spot on the palm of his left hand. A slimy-looking mess. Calling the game, Joe Buck and Tim McCarver call out Rogers multiple times, wondering out loud what's going on. Tony La Russa's not exactly kicking back with his big screen TV and a can of Budweiser or anything like that. He's not doing shots with his friends, that's for sure. While this is going on, he's trying to manage the game. He has no clear look at Rogers' pitching hand all the way from the dugout, nor does he have any reason to suspect that something's amiss. But word travels fast. By the time Juan Encarnacion, excuse me for that one, but by the time Juan Encarnacion taps back to the mound to end a Cardinals mini-threat, La Russa's been told that Rogers might be loading the ball with a, quote, suspicious substance. The stage is set for one of the most infamous incidents in baseball history. La Russa is going to run to the umpires and furiously point the finger at Rogers. The crew chief will confront Rogers, catch him brown-handed, then chuck him from the game. Jim Leyland's going to blow his top. A packed Comerica Park will riot. The Tigers, already down 1-0 in the series, will lose whatever hope they had of coming back, and the Cardinals will claim their first World Series title in 24 years. More than that, the incident will reignite one of baseball's oldest controversies. A century before steroid use made a posse of self-righteous sports writers lose their minds. Pitchers hawked loogies on spitballs. Rather, they hawked them on baseballs and created the spitball. Get a little emotional here. Spitting on, greasing, or otherwise doctoring balls remained en vogue long after baseball made it illegal. But with the most recent generation came a plunge in illegal pitches. With one simple act, La Russa would yank one of the game's most roguish traditions back into the spotlight. Instead, he blinks. La Russa tells the crew chief what is going on, but asks that he not check Rogers' hand. If he's got something on there, La Russa actually said, just make sure he wipes it off and let's play ball. The umpire relays the message to Leyland. Leyland warns Rogers. Rogers wipes off the brown spot, then throws 7 more shutout innings en route to a 3-1 Tigers win. None of which made a lick of difference. The Cardinals went on to win the World Series 4-1, and the art of screwing with a baseball for fun and profit disappeared yet again. Presumably, never to return until recently, until Brian Matusz came along. So, whatever did happen to the spitball? And by the way, I got to mention, I at least have to address that Tony La Russa certainly played the gentleman's part here in not going out and demanding that the entire World Series be put in jeopardy because someone was trying to fetch an angle, so to speak, trying to come up with this equalizer. Because keep in mind, the weather was nasty and it was hard for pitchers to handle these balls. But nevertheless, La Russa took the high road, reported it to the umpire quietly. The umpire quietly reported the complaint to Jim Leyland, who quietly told Kenny Rogers to knock it off, and they played ball. I mean, I think that's all around more importantly than the spitball. I think that is just a great scenario. It's just a typical gentleman baseball right there. Anyhow, whatever happened to the spitball? A gambling scandal from 93 years ago goes down as the biggest black mark in the game's history. Then another one keeps baseball's all-time hit leader out of the Hall of Fame. To this day, though that might change soon. He is a talking head on Fox Sports right now. I'm not even going to mention his name. Also, what about Joe Jackson? I will mention Joe Jackson because Joe Jackson should be reinstated long before Pete Rose ever even becomes before there's even any consideration for Pete Rose. We need to get Joe Jackson back in the Hall of Fame talk, so to speak. Let's move on to performance-enhancing drugs. They get outlawed. Spitballs we're talking about, and performance-enhancing drugs, all these nasty things, only to get linked years later to one of the game's biggest names. Sign stealing triggers one of baseball's most unforgettable moments. Alex Rodriguez. I didn't say that. And continues to swat new hornet's nests 60 years later. Talking about all these scandals that have happened over the course of 93 years. Going on 110 years. It depends on where you want to find its genesis. I'm, of course, speaking of the modern baseball era here. I'm sorry I wasn't clear about that initially. But why not? I mean, why not just go ahead and include the dead ball era? I mean, let's forget about the spitball for a second and just include the dead ball era. Gambling was insane back then. I mean, baseball was essentially set up and became popular because people could gamble on it, including players, mind you. One of the reasons why players why players became professionals is because, or why teams decided and owners decided they should pay their players, is because they figured if they paid their players enough money, they wouldn't gamble on games. And it worked for the most part. Anyhow, meanwhile, doctoring pitches helped extend the careers of countless fading arms throughout baseball history. Drugs, gambling, athletes beating their wives. Forget it. This guy's throwing a spitball. Let's throw him in jail. So, meanwhile, while all these catastrophes are happening, the spitball emerges, or the spitball comes back, and it's helping these older pitchers extend their careers. More than a simple performance enhancer, some would say that throwing spitballs was just plain old. It was just damn fun. Straight up, it was just fun. Anytime a suspected scuffer or greaser came to town, local media fired off breathless, does he or doesn't he? Will he or won't he? Type columns, right? Students of the game watched the pitcher's every move, looking for a fishy hand movement or a sleeve swipe. I wonder what Ichiro is actually doing every time he comes to the plate. A batter's dirty look as he walked back to the dugout was itself worth the price of admission. The mere threat of a spitball drove hitters batty to the point where they'd get pissed if it wasn't thrown, given all the waiting and anguish they went through over the course of a game. How and why did all of that vanish from the game? Seriously, where did it go? Bruce Sutter, says Mike Maddox, the Texas Rangers pitching coach and 15-year Major League veteran whose own pitching career briefly coincided with the Hall of Fame relievers. He mastered the splitter, he says. All of a sudden you had a pitch that had the same action you could get with the grease ball. Though Sutter started his big league career in the mid-'70s and retired nearly a quarter century ago, the emergence of his split-finger fastball and the decline of the spitball are fairly recent events by historical standards. Pitchers threw spitters way back in the dead ball. I mean, as far back as the early 1860s, easily, when baseball was just getting started as an organized sport. It became a favorite of numerous early 20th century pitchers, including Hall of Famers Jack Chesbro and Eddie Walsh. The period became known as the dead ball era. Bleh. Dead ball. The dead what? So anyhow, baseballs lacked the lively center that would usher in an offensive explosion in the 1920s. But the balls were dead for another reason. There just weren't enough of them. Teams made do with just a handful of balls per game, and umpires would do anything in their power to conserve their supply. This would have been bad enough with balls simply getting whacked by bats and smacking through rough infield dirt. But pitchers and their supporting infielders goosed the process along, spitting all over the ball and unleashing streams of Tabasco juice. Tabasco, that's funny. Maybe Tabasco is a new way to do it. They'd spit this nasty tobacco juice all over the ball. Friggin' disgusting. They would chew licorice, spewing the sweet substance, all that viscosity, all over the ball. That was another common practice. If the chewing a substance that would make your spit, really viscous and just really thick and nasty, and just wiping it all over the ball. And think about it. That's gross stuff, but it was still legal. There was so much more. Pitchers slathered mud on balls. They rubbed wax, soap, or grease on them. You could scuff or cut up a ball using sandpaper or a tack or anything else you could find. Eddie Cicotte, a small right-hander who also got pinched in the Black Sox scandal of 1919. Speaking of Joe Jackson, put Joe Jackson in. All right. Anyhow, his teammate, who got pinched in the same scandal, became famous for his shine ball, a move that required scooping a special oil used to treat infields and rubbing it all over the ball, creating a shine on one side and making the ball move in ways that completely flummoxed and confounded even the best hitters. Depending on what they smeared on the ball and how good they got at manipulating these oozy substances, pitchers could make pitches drop, fade away, or